All right. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for this episode. Welcome to this one from the Joyful Scaling Podcast. Today, we're talking about high performance. We're talking about a go-getter who is so young and has done so much. Oh my God, you're going to love her. She's a high achiever. She likes to get it done and get it done well. But we're going to talk about how sometimes when all we want to do is do the hard work, this is where Andrea shines. She helps her clients be like, no, you need a strategy. All right. Today, we're talking with a certified leadership coach for corporate women. Her name is Andrea Martin. She is the CEO of Andrea Martin Consulting. She has quickly become the go-to coach for high-performing corporate women. An immigrant, a mother of two, a wife, a people leader, and a coach. She fully understands the dynamics of what it takes to wear many hats while still moving towards your goals. And notice I said plural. More than one goal, right? How many of us out here are super passionate and super ambitious? Andrea holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, which totally blows my mind. Like, I am not a science person. That's amazing. And she has a master's in business. Oh, and did I tell you she loves the Lord Jesus Christ? I mean, this woman, the Lord God created I'm tired just like looking at her resume. All right. She's had experience leading multi-billion with a B dollar projects, and she brings all of that experience and education together to deliver a straightforward, powerfully effective coaching perspective. Let's welcome Andrea.
Oh my gosh. I want to bottle this up and just play it wherever I go because I need that. That was the biggest hype. I don't need coffee after that. Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Well, let's let the listeners in on a little secret. Andrea and I are in a mastermind together. And I'm a people person. I love to meet people. So I didn't know that she was a believer, but I'm like, I want to get to know you better. Oh my goodness. We were on the phone. We were both like fell madly in love with each other. It's right.
Absolutely. It was mutual. Absolutely mutual.
It was insane. All right. I want to start with something that you mentioned in your notes, and that is the hard truth, and I alluded to it earlier, that intelligence and hard work is only going to get you so far, because without strategy, you're going to be lost. I'd love you to kind of speak to us high performers and set us straight here.
Absolutely. And I see this so much with my clients. They are going after really big things. They have their blinders on. They're putting their head down, doing what needs to get done. They do it flawlessly, but then no one knows what they're doing. No one knows all the behind the scenes. And I always imagine this as a theater. You always focus on maybe the main singer if you're in an opera, and then you have that one backstage person that's running around from one side to the other. They're making sure the curtain goes up and down at the right time. But unless we don't shine light on that person, we take them for granted. And they could be the smartest person in the room that know all the technology behind the scenes. But if we don't shine light on that work, then we don't know. And I just encourage, I'm a big proponent for advocating for what you do, the value that you bring, and making sure that I call it, don't live in the shadow of assumption that people know what you're doing. Take control of that narrative, tell your story. Your story is worth being told, own it, and be the narrator, be the one that, shines it really with everyone else.
Yeah. And, as a former attorney, man, I love advocacy. I love that word. That is so good. We have to advocate for ourselves. And I know when I was in corporate and even in the law firm for that matter, it is easy, I think, especially as women, to be kind of ignored. Like, I know I was the go-to for brief writing, but I wasn't put on the big cases when I was with the big firms because I was a woman who actually had children who wanted to spend time with them. What do you think of that? Right? So what are some tips maybe for how to advocate for yourself if you find yourself in that situation where you feel like you're trying to be vocal, but nobody's listening?
I like thinking about finding your stakeholders. If you were, and similar for us owning a business, like who's your ideal client, who's your client internally, maybe within a corporation that you need to be thinking about providing your solutions. And just as much as any sort of really anything you own is not afraid of having a commercial on TV. They're not feeling shy about telling you that a new iPhone is coming down the pipeline. We shouldn't feel that way about shining light on what we're doing and our talents and our gifts is essentially a way to actually provide more value to the company. So I like to think about it ways that are less overwhelming, because at times the reason we don't do it is because it feels like we're bragging. It feels like, well, shouldn't they know? I would know because, but the thing is, everyone's worried about their own lives. Everyone's worried about what's happening to them, not really what is that you're doing. So simple ways would be, let's say you have your stakeholder, you know who you need to let them know what they're doing. How can you present this information in a way that is beneficial for them in the situation and beneficial for you? One of the things I like to tell my clients is, when does your boss meet with their boss? Think you have to know this information. When do they meet with their boss? Because what if every time before they have their weekly meeting, the day prior, you're sending them the wins of the team, projects that are coming down the pipeline? You're essentially saying everything you're doing, but you're providing it in a packaged way to where you're going to make them look like the winner. And guess what? People like to talk about the things that make them look like a winner. So now you're getting exposure, not just to your boss, but at skip level as well. So it's like, let's work smarter around this. You don't have to do more, but we just want to make sure everything you are doing is being shared in a way that it ties the connection on a business perspective too.
That is so smart. Because I had a Monday late morning meeting with the CEO when I was a director of HR and general counsel. And yeah, if people would have come to me and said, hey, make sure you get this bug in his ear, and it made me look good too, heck yeah, I would have been all over it. That's awesome. Really great. All right, let's talk about reinventing yourself. Because I know for me, sometimes when it got to be too toxic in one law firm, then I was like looking for recruiters. Okay, get me out of here. Get me out of here. But I know that you can reinvent yourself even within the organization, right?
Yes.
But I think it can be difficult when we're thinking of the players involved. So I would love you to speak to this idea of reinventing ourselves. Where do we begin?
Well, the thought of reinventing yourself came from, and it's going to be so different for every single one of us, but the idea that nothing is set in stone unless we want it to be, that the path we took up until now, it led us here for a reason, and that now it's allowing us to see maybe a different picture that now will take a different journey. And I always like to tell my clients, anyone that I speak to, is you cannot blame yourself from 2 years ago for having made a decision. She or he made that decision with the best information they had at the time. You know more now. So the question is, what do you want to change with that new information that you know? And this is when reinventing yourself comes into place, and knowing that we evolve as humans, that we have gifts, that God knows that we have gifts that we've been given. And if we don't feel like we're really able to express them in the way that we want to in the current environment, then we have every right to go find the one that we do. And I reinvented myself a couple of times, but I had a really big attachment to the engineering side of me because, well, I did my degree in chemical engineering. I worked in the energy industry for over a decade. I led large teams. I was told I was, the next version of, like, my boss was like, you're going to be me. And there's a lot of identity attachment to when people tell you certain things that maybe, sound good to your ego. But I had to ask myself personally, yes, I see what everyone's telling me I'm going to gain, but what would I lose if I stay in this path? And what I was losing wasn't worth losing for any sort of gain that was presented to me that wasn't even really assured. It was more of, this is what you could become, what you could do. Maybe. And I really had to, maybe one day you'll be this. So it's like, it's not even, I knew for sure what I would lose, but I wasn't really for sure the gain was actually, it was going to happen for sure. So when it comes to reinventing, I think we are allowed to flourish in new ways. We're allowed to, thank God, to replant ourselves in new locations if we want to. We're not stuck in the pot permanently, and we need to follow that intuition. We need to, when you pray and you get that feeling. And I think I share this with you, but God's been yelling at me lately with a lot of the things that I'm doing. And we just kind of have to lean into those signs. Anytime that I felt that being a business owner was a bad decision, something happened that day that reminded me otherwise. And I'm a firm believer that it was God telling me, like, get that noise out of your head. I always imagine God talks to me like that, like, stop. I'm sure we all have our own version of what God talks to us like, but like, God's very like sassy with me sometimes. But it's like, get that noise out of your head, because look, look what's in front of you, look what you're doing. And I can tell you, I have countless examples that I know for a fact when doubt has creeped in, I have been reminded that I'm in the right path. But we have to be open to listening to that voice of reinventing ourselves.
Wow. Amen. Amen. Well, I'm interested. I think our listeners would love to hear, how did you go from that big, important corporate job to leaving it all behind and starting your own thing?
About 3 years ago, or I guess a little bit more now, I've always worked in a very like volatile environment with oil and gas. So I mean, people tell me all the time, like, especially that are not in the industry, I've lived through layoffs for the last 12 years. So whether one or two layoffs a year, it was like, oh, here's the other one that we're having. Like, it was just a very common thing. And as a mother of two young kids and the breadwinner of our family, I felt that I couldn't be the leader I was called to be with that fear in the back of my head of what if, what if, what if? Can I make the hard decisions if I'm always worried about, will the hard decisions hurt me politically? Will it hurt me with the wrong person? What if that person has a say in my job security? And I told my husband, I think I would like to create something that gives us this security blanket. And at that time, my husband was staying home with our kids. Our daughter, we were doing speech therapy and we wanted to focus on certain things for her. So we knew where the focus was, our family. And I have an idea of what I could do. I just need your support to make it happen. And I started working the weekends, before work, after work. And I did that for, almost 2 years with a lot of consistency. And by the time I was getting close to having to pick one or the other, a really great opportunity came in place to where my mom and I were going to become business partners and open another business together. And I just decided this is the sign I'm meant to go all in into entrepreneurship. I see what I can do here. And that was last July of 2021 that I made the transition. But something I like to tell everyone is I grieved that for a while, even though I knew it was the right decision for me, leaving my team that I had worked so hard to protect during so many layoff rounds and coaching and mentoring. I did grieve it for a couple of months where, you feel like there's that attachment still to that side of you that you're like slowly cutting that cord. But it does come with some sadness too, because there's a chapter of your life that's closing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's not it. So now you're this amazing coach for women in corporate, but you're about to open a brand new business. So I would love to tell the ladies what that business is and why would you start a second business when you're already this busy mama with great family as a priority? And just tell us about that.
That's been the theme of my life. Like, why would you add something else to your plate? Like, I can tell you even back to like, why'd you pick chemical engineering? Why'd you go get a master's when you were working? Why'd you go? It's just always been, I like knowing that I'm stretching myself to new grounds. And I had worked so hard for so long to get my business into the 6-figure mark. And then, that's growing in a healthy, steady pace that I'm like, okay, now what else am I going to grow? It's like that itch was there. And I kind of like living in a state of uncomfortable growing pains. I think I enjoy that personally. And if I'm not feeling it, I notice my mood changes. I notice that I don't feel as challenged. And I want to show, especially my daughter and my son, that gosh, you can do anything you want to do in life. And this is something that we're venturing into that's very different to anything I've ever done, which comes with it. But some parts are actually very similar because while there's a lot of networking involved, I'm essentially doing everything I tell my clients to do to grow their careers. I'm doing it in a different manner. And so we're doing a med spa, anti-aging focused, hormone replacement, your aesthetic side, and just really helping people biohack their bodies to ultimate wellness. And that's really important. I think a lot of us let go of our health along the way. And because we are so overwhelmed with everything going on in our lives, that I wanted to create a hub where we can really help you feel your best, look your best, and just overall look forward to the anti-aging process.
Yeah. So, but help me understand. I think this would be a very interesting point. I know we didn't talk about this, but if you wouldn't mind going here, I'd love it.
Do it.
Listen, like, let's try to let's try to give a peek into your day. Like, how does it break down between being a good spouse and being a great mom and having this business and now getting this other one off the ground? Like when do you sleep at all or
I know, right? My son definitely makes sure I don't. No. So yeah, I love him, but like I'm gonna be like, one day you're payback, you're not gonna sleep in when you're a teenager because there's no way. So actually my husband, he works a very interesting schedule. So he actually works at a pharmaceutical company and he has an early shift. So he's 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. So I have structured my life to be really the primary caregiver of my kids, my business to be run within the hours of 8 and 4. And I am hiring a really great staff to support me through the growth of the second business. And a typical day is waking up around 6 a.m. with my kids. Hopefully they slept till 6 a.m. Some days it's 5:30. If I had anything to say about it, I am not the 4 a.m. person, like when the multimillionaires tell you their morning routine. That's never going to be me. I want to actually show that don't have to do that. I'm more of a night owl too. So I'll wake up, get the kids ready to go to school. I'll get them going. And then I have a couple of stops that I do along the way. I've been really networking with the businesses here locally, especially recently. So I have a couple of spots that I go to, talk to business owners. Then I come home. I have calls usually from 10 till about 3. I talk to several teams. I have a team that helps me with my consulting business. I have a right hand that she keeps me straight. I pretty much told her, tell me what to do every day. I give her my vision for the month, and then I go, and I need you to remind me every day what I told you I need to do. And she goes, you got it. So that's what she does. Then I have a project management team that I meet with once a week that's helping me with the construction of my other business. And I try to close everything off by 4 and go pick up my kids. We'll do activities because I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. So between Taekwondo, we have some gymnastics stuff that we're doing, dinner, bath, bedtime. Bedtime is around, I'm going to be real, 8:30. I would love for it to be 7:30, but I have not figured out how to get my kids to go to bed at 7:30. And then I'll do about a couple hours of work. So it's more of the administrative stuff. Like they're asleep. I'm in my iPad. It's things I can do. I'm reviewing some of the content. I'm responding to some messages, but it's just stuff that I can do while listening to music. Or my favorite thing is like watching like NCIS in the background or something that is like the mindless stuff that you don't need to be like fully present. Like it's not like you're like doing hard stuff. And that's really a typical day.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. Because one of the things you said in your notes is that you help your clients create a more balanced lifestyle and you're living it. So how do you, and I think this might, productivity and decision-making skills may come into play, but how would you help our listeners to create that more balanced lifestyle?
I love starting with your non-negotiables, and that's the great place for me to like, that's my go-to first, like my non-negotiables. And this is why I don't believe follow my performance routine so you can be as productive, because what matters to me and what matters to you could be really different. And we should honor the things that matter to us. And part of that is our non-negotiables. I knew one of my non-negotiables, especially transitioning into full-time entrepreneurship, was I wanted to take my kids to school and pick them up. I wanted to experience that. I've always said I've had this calling to always want to see my kids' faces when they're leaving school. I want to know their demeanor. I want to know, are they smiling? Do they look happy? I want to see who they're hanging out with. Like I have this thing and like I have to do that. So I have structured my schedule to where those are moments that are important. And as I'm hiring someone to come into my other business, I go, I need to trust that you can handle this between the hours of 3:30 to 4:30 while I go pick up my kids, because that's important to me. And we have to honor the things that matter. Putting my kids to bed matters. So I kind of get my anchors, and then I go, okay, what has to happen during the day? What is the real thing that's going to help me push forward? What is noise? And I have to be comfortable letting go of the noise. I have text messages that I've not responded to for the last couple of days. And I've had to say, this is a boundary right now. Like I have to honor what drains my energy and what I can do when I have a little bit more time. but we can't be everything to everyone. So I've chosen, who do I want to be with and who do I want to put as my number one? And also being comfortable with not being a people pleaser of, okay, I can't be everywhere, but I do have to stick with what matters. Like date night with my husband once a week, that's a non-negotiable. So we make sure that we do that. And even we've had our kids crash our date night a couple of times when we couldn't find, but at least we went out and we gave them their French fries and they were able to hang out for a little bit while we talked. But there's certain things that really matter. And I would just encourage your listeners, what are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you look back at this week and you go, you know what? I don't want that to happen again. Like how I feel right now versus whatever task I accomplished that day is not worth it. And I always imagine if you're an Olympic athlete and you got to the gold medal, the podium, who's cheering for you on the crowd? Are they part of your journey or did we lose them in the process? So get to the gold medal, but make sure that in the process, you keep the people you love and your top priorities as number one.
Wow. How did you get so wise at such a young age?
Seriously. Oh, I don't know about that.
Really? I mean, okay. So I'm really big on this thing about boundaries, huge about boundaries with my clients. And I've mentioned this many times on the podcast as well. Like people laugh at me because I have 300,000 unopened emails, but I have many Gmail accounts. Some of it I don't even go into, but I have no problem with that. But I used to. So did you ever have a problem with that? And if
100%.
Okay. So how did you come around?
I think I don't know if it's as common, but maybe we all go through a process of we get those warning signs that we never thought we would get because we think we're invincible and nothing can ever face us. Honestly, for me was I started losing my hair about 2 years ago. And it was really my cortisol levels were through the roof because I was doing everything. And I laugh at this now, but like I was cringing when I was watching this because I was watching an old training I had from like 2 years ago. So here, like I have 2 very young kids and in the video, I'm talking about boundaries and it's clearly I'm looking exhausted and I'm like not living to what I'm saying in that moment. But I think knowing how important it is, but still struggling with, I'm in this growth moment. And I think when you're growing something, it's so difficult to put boundaries because you don't want to miss out on opportunity or you don't want to feel like you're not doing enough when you hear of people grinding and living their dreams. And if you have things that matter, like your people, like maybe your kids, your life, with your family matters so much, we can totally negotiate in that moment of why those boundaries are not worth it. Because we don't have time. We have so much to do. If we don't do this, then how are we going to grow? And I'm doing this for my kids. So what excuse do I have? But if we lose ourselves in the process and thinking back to the gold medal, I started really shifting how I viewed boundaries as part of my strategy and seeing like I show up 10 times more powerful in a day with these boundaries. I actually show up even better than I did when I didn't have them. So I'm like, I'm doing more in maybe 3 hours than I was in 8 because I was exhausted. But I had to get real with myself and thinking about how do I want to get to the top, whatever top I'm reaching. And can I look back in this journey and say, I would encourage other women in particular to take this journey with me. And if I don't like how that sounds, I don't want to do it that way. And that's really what I had to kind of come to terms with.
So good. When you're talking about boundaries, is it a lot of around time? And if there are other things, like what are some key boundary areas that maybe our listeners should kind of examine in their own life?
I think one of the biggest things is actually some people in our lives. I always look, one of the most important boundaries I think we need to be aware of is what makes our emotions swing from one place to the other. And that could be that one friend that is always just telling you everything that's going wrong in their lives. And it's like, it's okay to love people from afar, put some boundaries in place, retrain those relationships to be like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be, sharing everything that's going wrong. Maybe we can be a sounding board, but there's a limit to that as well. If you know certain things, like if you're highly empathetic and you're the one person that everyone's telling them everything that's going on and you're carrying that with you, that's a sign that maybe there's a boundary that's missing. So I look at if your energy was a tank, and I don't know if anyone's seen like Monsters Inc. from Disney World, but like they were filling those tanks with energy. If yours is always flickering, ask yourself and be honest. If you were to look at the areas from family, from friendships, from work, from your personal life, from health, which ones of those are taking more than they're giving you, and reevaluating that. Because at the end of the day, if you lose yourself in the process, you don't enjoy the journey, you're actually not going to go far, because the odds are the journey will no longer be enjoyable. What you were passionate about will no longer matter because you're not passionate about it anymore. And it's okay to love certain people from afar. I think some relationships can be very draining, and it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to say, I love you, but I'm not responding to your text. Like I'm going to put some boundaries here.
That is so good. That can be hard, especially if it's a close family member or very close friend. But it is so good. It is absolutely empowering. I want to go back to one thing. I see our time is going way too quickly. This spa that you're opening, did you have, and I think I know the answer, did you have prior experience with owning a med spa?
No, zero experience. And that's actually going to been one of the biggest learning curves that I've had the last couple months. But so I'm big on creating high performing teams. That's actually something I've done majority of my career. And I'm big on creating the right bonus structure. And because of that and the way I've presented that, I've attracted incredible talent my way because they've never seen a compensation plan like the one I've put together. So I'm excited because the things I don't know, I'm bringing in the right people, and the things that I do know, I'm going to lean into them. But I'm very comfortable admitting what I don't know, and I'm very comfortable paying the right person with the knowledge to do what they do best and lean into my own team to help me with that. But that's part of something I've had to kind of just roll with it too.
Yeah. But that takes guts. So I guess you were always a gutsy kind of lady.
I signed an international contract right out of college that made my mom like freak out. And she goes, "Where are you moving to?" I go, "I'll find out 2 weeks before I go." So I think I can say yes.
Yeah, you're gutsy. All right. Oh my gosh. All right. I want to circle back to your area of expertise, positioning your clients. How do you help them position themselves in the corporate world to get what they want?
It starts with understanding really clearly what is it that you do well and how do you help the company reach their goals. And it's very similar if I were to look at it from a business perspective of what is your niche inside maybe for your ideal clients, your specific niche. Well, what is your niche in your corporate career, and understanding that piece really well. Once we start getting some clarity on that, I have several assessments that we do, several tools that we go through. All of a sudden they start saying, oh my goodness, I'm really good at this part of the strategy. I could really be actually, this is the team I really should be in, because that's where I lean in the most. So we look at your track record, we look at your results, at your performance, where have you shined? And now that you know where you've shined, we make sure other people know that that's where you shine. So we create the plan to bridge the two. So you become the go-to person for those specific things that you're naturally very skilled at.
Yeah. And I think the idea of gaining confidence to speak up, because I know when I think about who I am now and who I was then, it's funny because even though I thought I was a powerhouse then, I kept quiet when I shouldn't have. So are there some tips to, I don't want to fake it till we make it, but to really lean into who we really are so that we have the confidence we should, given all of our experience and good stuff we bring to the table?
I love leaning into the client's personality. If I have someone that's like highly technical, we put numbers around it. It's like, you know how to speak numbers. So we're going to talk numbers. You're going to talk your numbers that you deliver. If I have someone that's very people oriented, okay, we're going to talk about people. We're going to talk about the things that you naturally already talk about, but in a way that it relates back to you, and it's not something that you're talking with your peers. And I will challenge all my clients to have conversations with skip levels. And I always tell them, start with the skip levels that are further removed from you so you can practice, fumble, and then we get closer and closer to the ones that are the stakeholders. So when you do have these conversations, you feel really clear. But the confidence piece comes back from, and I see this is a theme I've noticed, lack of confidence is because of lack of clarity of what to talk about yourself. And if we get so clear that you practice with me and we are so crystal clear what exactly it is that you're going to say, then you're no longer having to figure it out. And that removes a lot of the fear that comes with, is it lack of confidence or lack of clarity?
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. And I can see that that works in the entrepreneurial space as well. Because I
Yes.
think when people's like, what do you do? And they're like, humana, a lot of times they're either like deer in the headlights. They don't even know what to say. Or the other extreme is they just keep talking ad nauseum because they don't have any clarity around it. So they just keep talking.
Yes,
So,
for sure.
oh my gosh, it's so good. Well, our time is up. So is there anything on your heart? We talked about so many great things, but is there anything on your heart, Andrea, that you really wanted to share that you haven't yet?
The biggest thing would be to stop caring so much what anyone else has to say or feel about what you're doing right now. If you're being called to do something, imagine yourself in 2 to 3 years, whatever those people, if they really are your people, saying it won't matter, and focus on who could you help,
Mhm.
whose lives are going to be affected positively by the work that you're doing. Yes, it can be silly sometimes to be on video. It can be silly sometimes to write your thoughts. Maybe you've never had before. Maybe you've changed. Maybe you've evolved. Maybe your friend from 10 years ago doesn't remember you this way. That's okay. They can get to know the new version of you, and but stick to what you're being called to.
So good. So good. So where is the best place for our listeners to find you online?
I love my Instagram page. It's been my baby since day one. So ms.andrea.martin. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at Andrea Martin MBA is my URL. But I hang out on both of those. I love, if you have a takeaway from this episode, I would love to hear it. That's always nice to see.
That's so good. There's only about like a dozen or so, I'm sure. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Ladies, I have no doubt your head is swirling with lovely thoughts, and I want you to capture those thoughts. I want you to listen back to this. There are so many good nuggets here, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are in the corporate space. Dig in and say, what can I get out of this episode? What can I use? And then implement it, because that's the purpose why we come to you so many times a week, because I want you to move your life and your business or your corporate success forward in a powerful way, always looking to God for his guidance, right? So one last thing, if you loved this episode, I have no doubt you did, please take a moment, if you haven't already done so, and leave a rating and a review. It helps us. It helps to push this out so that more sisters in Christ hear about joyful scaling and joyful business. Thanks again, Andrea. Mwah.
Thank you.
All right, ladies, we will see you next time.